Have you ever been threatened to remove a family heirloom just because a group calling themselves the HOA decided it didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic? I have. They sent warning letters. They snooped around. They made up regulations out of thin air. Did they think I'd quietly dismantle my father's boat? Their biggest mistake was not realizing I own the very land that provides access to the marina they're so desperate to protect, and I knew exactly what to do. This wasn't just about a boat anymore. It was about standing my ground and putting up a fence. I've never been the kind of guy who looks for a fight. I live peacefully on the shores of Green Lake, in a 2-story wooden house I renovated myself after a rough divorce. Every morning, I drink coffee on my porch, listen to birdsong, and watch the sunlight dance across the lake. It was a life too calm to be disturbed by something as absurd as an HOA until the day I received a letter, printed on cream-colored paper with the embossed logo of the Lakeside Estates HOA. Inside, a directive, not a reminder, not a request. A cold, bureaucratic command demanding I remove the boat docked behind my home, for aesthetic reasons. That boat isn't a toy. Its name is the Wanderer. It was my father's. It's what bonded us throughout my childhood. He taught me how to read the wind, tie knots, and trust my gut out on the water. When he died of a sudden heart attack, 5 years ago, that boat became the last piece of him I had left. I froze as I read the lifeless print. You have 30 days to remove the non-compliant vessel. Failure to do so will result in a $100 daily fine. I looked out at the dock. The Wanderer sat quietly, its deep blue hull reflecting the morning sun. I maintain it weekly. Every plank, every bolt polished with care, with love, with memory. And they called it ugly? Outdated? What a joke. I'm not the only one with a boat on this lake. 3 houses down, there's a tattered motorboat covered with a tarp that looks like it's hiding a shipwreck. 5 homes across the cove, there's a rusted pontoon that hasn't moved since last summer. But those, the HOA left untouched. Only the Wanderer was targeted. Only I was told to remove my vessel for aesthetic reasons. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about a boat. It was a calculated strike, an opening shot aimed squarely at me, and if they thought I'd quietly bow out, they picked the wrong man. My name is Cal Bennett, 48 years old, a marine engineering consultant, and someone who's weathered enough storms to know when to bend and when to brace. This was time to brace. I set my coffee mug down on the railing, eyes fixed on the small boat swaying gently at the dock. The Blue Jay, a 26-foot wooden sailboat, wasn't anything fancy, but to me, it was a vault of memories. My father bought it when I was just a 10-year-old kid, and it was aboard that boat he taught me how to read the wind, feel the water, and steady the helm even as storms gathered above. He passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, and since then, that boat has been my only way of staying close to him. Every time I row out into the middle of the lake, it feels like I'm having another conversation with that man, a father, a teacher, and a friend no one could ever replace. After the divorce, I bought this lakeside house to start over, a cozy, wooden home with pine floors, a wide porch, and a private dock leading straight into Evergreen Lake. I keep the Blue Jay docked there, tied down to the pilings, scrubbing every plank, polishing every brass fitting, like I'm taking care of the past itself. I thought I'd found a little slice of paradise until that damned letter from the HOA arrived. Heavy paper. Embossed Lakeshore Estates HOA logo, folded neatly in a cream-colored envelope as if it were an invitation to a gala. But inside, a declaration of war. Your vessel does not meet community aesthetic standards. If not removed within 30 days, you will be fined $100 per day. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at the boat. No damage, no rust, no neglect. I just polished the hull last week, and to be honest, it looked cleaner than the cracked speedboat 3 houses down. I didn't understand. I had never broken any rule. No one had ever complained. And if aesthetic standards were truly the issue, I certainly wouldn't be the first on the list. But somehow, I was the only one being targeted. So I started digging. And the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't about enforcing community standards. This was selective, intentional, calculated. And the name behind it? No surprise, Karen Whitford, newly elected HOA president for the past 6 months. Karen is the kind of person you can smell coming from 2 blocks away, expensive perfume and all. She showed up at every HOA meeting in a Chanel blazer, diamond bracelets, and a smile sharp enough to shave steel. Under her control, the HOA was no longer a community body. It was a weapon, used to manipulate, intimidate, and turn the neighborhood into a playground for the powerful. I asked Bob, an old neighbor and former Marine, "You get any letters about that busted pontoon of yours?" He raised an eyebrow. "That piece of junk?" "Never." But I heard Karen's eyeing a few lakefront properties, something about investment with her husband. And suddenly, it clicked. The boat wasn't the problem. I was the problem. And the only thing stopping Karen from acquiring my land was the fact that I was still here with that boat, full of memories of my father. An aesthetic violation was just step 1. If I gave in, the land would be theirs, just like 6 other lots they'd scooped up over the past 2 years. I knew I had to fight back. But not just for the boat, for justice. I went home, opened the filing cabinet, and started pulling everything I had: land use documents, old maps, original zoning blueprints. I needed proof, something strong enough to crush Karen's ambitions before she consumed the whole community, and I found it. On an old, yellowing map, a narrow strip of land leading to the Marina, marked as private property, and the name on the deed, mine. Suddenly, Karen's crusade against me became crystal clear. They wanted me gone, so they could take the land. But they had no idea that the most critical strip of land in the entire neighborhood, I'd owned it all along. And now, I knew exactly what I was going to do. That evening, I attended the regular HOA meeting with something Anna never saw coming: carefully prepared truth. The room was unusually packed. People murmured about rising HOA fees, restricted house paint colors, and, of course, my old boat. I sat in the back row holding a stack of papers and a USB drive filled with photos of boats in worse condition than the Wanderer, docked all over the lake. I wasn't alone. Grace, my neighbor and reluctant lawyer, was there, sharp as ever in both look and logic. Bob gave me a nod from across the room, a glance that said, "It's time." At the front, Anna Sinclair sat stiff-backed, as if she were the supreme justice of lakeside shores. Navy blazer, pearl necklace, and a taut smile painted with lipstick. She looked like an advertisement for manufactured authority. After nearly 2 hours of petty debates, from fence heights to which flowers should go in the roundabout, Anna finally asked, "Does anyone have an issue they'd like to raise?" I stood. Every head turned. I received a notice demanding I remove my boat for failing to meet aesthetic standards. I've reviewed the entire community charter. Not a single line addresses boat aesthetics. A ripple of whispers passed through the room. Some people leaned toward each other. Others glanced at Anna. She adjusted in her chair, voice sweet as syrup but sharp as razors. "Thank you for bringing this up. The board has reviewed several vessels, including yours, that no longer reflect the modern image of lakeside shores. Then please point me to the exact rule that defines modern and grants you the right to order the removal of my private property," I said calmly. "Because according to the images I've brought, several other boats, rusted with torn tarps, clearly in worse shape than my well-maintained vessel, remain untouched." I handed the USB to the coordinator. They projected the photos onto the screen. Pictures don't lie. A boat with a collapsed canopy, one abandoned and covered in bird droppings, another so rotted it sagged sideways off the dock. Douglas Hayes, HOA vice president, and Anna's favorite real estate henchman piped up with smug condescension. We reserve the right to define aesthetic standards. If you don't like, it maybe improve your boat. I gave a dry laugh and turned to Grace. And what exactly are you saying, Douglas? She asked. Because under Oregon state law, any regulation that affects private property must be documented and passed via community vote. Can you show us the rule you're enforcing? Linda, the HOA secretary, gentle and meticulous, started flipping through the binder. I'm not finding anything that references this, she said. Not in the charter, not in any addendum, and not in any meeting minutes from the past 6 months. Silence. Thick and heavy. Anna tried to recover. The board has the right to address factors that affect property values. Bob stood up sharply, voice booming like a drill sergeant. I've lived here since this place was built. We've never judged boat aesthetics. This isn't some luxury resort. This is a community, a home, not a fashion show for real estate flippers. Applause broke out. A few stood. Others nodded in agreement. I turned and locked eyes with Anna. You're welcome to dislike the boat, but don't threaten me with your fake authority. That boat is property. It's a memory. It's a family legacy. And unless you want a civil lawsuit for abuse of power, I suggest you rescind the notice. The room went dead quiet. Then Linda nodded slightly. I'll record your objection and recommend a formal review of the notice. Anna said nothing, just clenched the straps of her handbag, but I could tell. Her gaze wasn't arrogant anymore. It was afraid, because that night I didn't just defend a boat, I planted the seeds of an uprising, and the path forward was only beginning to open. After that HOA meeting, I came home feeling strange, not exactly angry, not exactly relieved. It was like cleaning up a mess only to find a trap lying underneath it. And sure enough, that's exactly what I found. I stepped into the small office, next to my living room, where I'd stored all the documents from when I bought this house 3 years ago after the divorce. A dusty box sat under the desk. I flipped through every stack, zoning maps, purchase agreements, county survey records, and then, like someone had yanked a curtain open inside my head, I noticed something odd. A piece of land. Tiny, just a curved stretch along the lake, connecting the public walkway to the community marina, and it sat inside the boundary of my property. I rubbed my eyes, flipped through the diagrams again, double-checked every lot number. Then I pulled up the county's public property maps on my computer. It took nearly an hour, but once I had everything matched up, I knew without a doubt. The HOA had been using a portion of land I legally owned as the only access point to the marina, without permission. I slumped into my chair, stunned. That narrow pathway, lined with stones and timber planks, had always been assumed to be common ground. But in reality, it belonged to me. And for nearly 3 years, the HOA had used it freely for the entire neighborhood, without a single permit, easement, or formal agreement. Never in my life had such a small discovery felt so huge. I immediately called Grace, still my neighbor, but now officially my volunteer attorney. Less than 30 minutes later, she was in my living room, laptop in one hand and a stack of legal notebooks in the other. She skimmed through the papers quickly, then stopped at the original 1998 map and the deed from my property purchase. Jim, she said slowly, this walkway falls entirely within your lot lines. They've been using your land for community access without any legal right or easement. So, I block it off? I asked. Grace exhaled. Legally, yes. But it'll be a nuclear bomb, Jim. You wouldn't just be blocking the HOA. You'd be cutting off dozens of neighbors. People are going to be angry. Unless you can prove this is a justified response, not a personal vendetta. I looked out the window. The Wanderer floated gently in the water. Wasn't this all because they came after that boat in the first place? Because I didn't fit their aesthetic? Grace, I said, I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm doing it for justice. If I don't push back, someone else will get bullied just like I was. Today it's a boat. Tomorrow it's gardens. Homes, even the right to live here. She nodded. Then we do it by the book. We mark the boundary, issue formal notice to the HOA, and prepare for their reaction. In my head, the plan had already started forming, not to close a door, but to open their eyes. I would build a wooden fence, beautiful, solid, respectful, across the path to the marina. In the center, a gate, locked, with a sign that read, "Private property, access by agreement only," and I'd hold the key until the HOA sat down, signed a proper legal agreement, and ended this power game they'd been playing with the people around them. I turned to Grace. Help me hire a land surveyor and a fencing crew. We'll work around their schedule. But I want it done before the HOA's big marina event. Grace laughed, eyes gleaming. Oh, so you're not just staking your land, you're stalking your moment. I took a slow sip of coffee, lips pressed into a tight smile. Exactly. If they're going to treat this lake like their personal backyard, then it's time they learn to knock before entering. On Monday morning, I drove to the county land office to submit a property boundary confirmation request. A simple piece of paperwork on the surface, but the opening move in a counterattack that would shake HOA Lakeside Estates to its core. Also hired a reputable land surveying firm from a neighboring county, completely avoiding any contractors from within our area. I didn't want a single internal leak before the fence went up. 3 days later, the survey crew, led by a woman named Eleanor, arrived at my house with laser equipment, topographic maps, and an accuracy rate down to the inch. They worked quietly, professionally, circling the edges of my property, marking every foot with bright orange stakes, double-checking every line. Eleanor nodded with satisfaction once complete. "Mr. Anderson," she said, "we confirm that the property line includes the entire pathway to the marina. There is no easement, no recorded public access. That strip belongs to you, fully and legally." I thanked her and held on to that confirmation like it was a golden legal shield. That evening, I invited Bob Martinez and Grace Whitmore to my house. The three of us sat on the back porch looking out over the lake as the golden sunset dipped behind the trees. I laid out the plan in full. A 6-foot cedar fence running along the lakeside boundary, a locked gate placed directly across the path to the Marina A sign, private property, no public access without written consent. And most importantly, the fence would be completed the morning of Anna Sinclair's big fundraising event at the marina. Bob nearly spit out his coffee, laughing. "You're going deep, Jim. That's an old-school flank move if I've ever seen one." Grace, ever the pragmatist, asked, "Have you prepared the official notice? By law, you need to give the HOA at least 24 hours written notice before erecting the barrier." I nodded and held up a sealed envelope. "I'm going to deliver it, right when they least expect it." Friday morning. 5:08 a.m. The construction crew arrived on time, loaded with cedar panels, cement, and power tools. I didn't pick an early hour to hide. I picked it to strike before the HOA had time to react. Rick, the lead contractor, who'd done several shoreline jobs, walked the perimeter with me one last time. "We'll have it up before noon," he said. "No worries." I just nodded. I wasn't worried. I was ready. As the first boards were raised, I sent a text to Grace and Bob. "Fence going up. Grab popcorn, 7:45 a.m. The screech of brakes cut across the driveway. Anna Sinclair's silver Mercedes skidded to a halt like a snake hitting an electric fence. She stormed out in high heels that sank into the grass, eyes wide at the fence rising just feet from the marina entrance. Her gaze, I swear, could have set the whole lake on fire. "What the hell are you doing?" she shrieked. I smiled and held up the survey report. "Just marking my property, Anna. This land is mine, legally, and I submitted a notice to the HOA this morning." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You have no right. This is a community. Access path. You're mistaken, I replied calmly. It never was community property. You've just been using it without permission. For years. That ends today. Anna pulled out her phone, started filming, and threatened to sue me for obstructing public access. I slowly pulled another folder from my briefcase, a copy of the county land deed and Grace's legal opinion. She fell silent, but her eyes didn't show surrender. They showed panic. A.M. The fence was complete. A tall, locked gate now stood squarely across the old pathway. A laser-etched wooden sign hung from the center. Private property. No trespassing without signed agreement. Violators will be prosecuted. I was the only one holding a key, and Anna knew it better than anyone. That afternoon, I sat on my porch sipping iced tea. Bob dragged over a chair and joined me. "This is the view I've been waiting for all week," he said, watching HOA members in suits scrambling near the lakeshore, calling around, searching desperately for another way in. I sipped again and replied quietly, "They want to go into the marina? Fine. But this time, they better knock first." That afternoon, as the sun began to stretch golden light across the lake, I was trimming a few lavender branches when I heard the sound of a familiar engine. Anna Sinclair's silver Mercedes pulled into the drive. This time, not hurried, not furious. It rolled in like a predator stalking its prey, cautious, slow, calculating. But Anna didn't come alone. Out of the passenger doors stepped Douglas Hayes, HOA vice president and local real estate peddler, and Linda Harrison, the board secretary, the only one among them I still had a shred of respect for. Anna approached, no yelling this time, no finger-pointing. She forced a smile that, I'd bet money, cost her a small fortune in facial muscle control. "Jim," she began, "we think it's time we sit down and talk. Maybe things went a little too far." I wiped my hands on my garden apron and crossed my arms. "Oh, really? You mean the 3 threat letters, the lawsuit warnings, and the imaginary boat aesthetic regulation? Is that what we're calling a little too far now?" Linda looked at the ground. Douglas avoided eye contact. Anna, undeterred, forced another grin. "We're not denying there were some misunderstandings," she continued. "But tomorrow is the big community fundraiser at the Marina, which currently is inaccessible, due to your fence." I tilted my head, feigning surprise. "Oh?" "I didn't get an invitation. Then again, it is my land. If people want to use it for events, well, there should be an agreement, shouldn't there?" Anna nodded stiffly. "And that's why we're here. We'd like to request access, just temporary. We don't want to ruin a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital." Ah, there it was, pulling out the Children's Hospital card, the oldest moral shield in the book. Too bad I wasn't the gullible type. "That does sound noble," I said calmly. "But I'll need something in return. Your HOA has threatened me, fabricated rules, and even surveilled me. No one steps onto my land unless I have something in writing." Linda spoke up softly. "What do you want, Jim?" I looked Anna dead in the eye. Simple. A written agreement from the HOA board with 3 points. Acknowledge that the land is mine and may only be accessed with written permission. Withdraw all violation notices related to my boat. Organize a public community meeting to review HOA procedures, including whether these so-called aesthetic regulations even exist. Douglas blurted out, "You're kidding. You want us to hang ourselves?" I shrugged. "If you don't like it, the event can go on, just without the marina." Anna bit her lip. I could see her doing the math. Reputation, sponsors, local officials, PR. "Fine," she said through clenched teeth. "But you must open the gate at exactly 4 p.m. tomorrow, no earlier, and lock it again immediately after the event ends." "Deal," I nodded. We stepped inside and signed 3 copies of the agreement I had already drafted. Linda signed first, quietly. Douglas hesitated, but Anna shot him a glare that froze his pen in motion. When Anna finally signed, I stamped the date with my notary seal. Done. She stood up, red-faced, and left without a word. Linda gave me a soft, "Thank you," and Douglas gave me a glare that could curdle milk before storming after her. That night, I stood on the deck of the Wanderer, the glow from my house reflecting off the still lake. In my hand was the signed agreement. I read it again, line by line, a reminder that I didn't need to play dirty to win. I just had to stand firm and play fair. Tomorrow, they will have their party. But every guest would pass through a gate I built. On land they once mocked, and every step across it would be silent proof that I was right. And they had underestimated the man who chose to protect his father's memory. The next afternoon, at exactly 4 p.m., I stepped out to the newly built wooden gate and slowly turned the key in the lock. The sun beamed through the pine trees, golden light spilling over the surface of Green Lake. Each sunray touched the fresh, fence-like stage lights, ready for a grand closing act. The gate swung open. Anna Sinclair stood not far away, wearing a navy blue evening dress, her heavily made-up face masking just enough of her tension. Next to her was Thomas, her husband, the man behind the scheme to gobble up every lakefront property, smirking while entertaining high-profile guests. Businessmen, a few reps from the local state senator's office, and even reporters from 2 local news stations. They walked through my gate, onto my land, as if completely unaware they were stepping onto the property of the man they once tried to force out of the community. I said nothing. No blockades, no speeches, just stood on my porch, iced tea in hand, watching them file through the official entrance to the Marina. My entrance. Bob Martinez leaned in and whispered, "They're walking a tightrope and don't even know the rope's fraying." I smiled. "We'll cut it, right after the party." By 7 p.m., the fundraiser was in full swing. Music played from a small dockside stage. Guests sipped wine, snapped photos, and clinked glasses. Anna floated around like a peacock, faking grace and dominance. But I wasn't there to watch the play. Was prepping for the final act. By 7:30 p.m., my backyard was ready. Bob had helped set up the folding chairs, projector, and speakers. Grace, lawyer, neighbor, and the real brains behind our paperwork, was doing a final run-through of the presentation slides. I sent out a neighborhood group text. Emergency. Community meeting at Jim's, 8 p.m. You'll want to be here. By 8 p.m., residents of Lakeside Estates began trickling away from the marina. One by one, they stepped into my yard, curious, concerned, and just a little tense. In 15 minutes, over 50 people had gathered, many still in formal wear. I stepped to the front. "Thanks for coming. Tonight, I want to tell you a story, not about my boat, but about a scheme that's been quietly unfolding right here in our neighborhood." The backyard fell silent. I began presenting. The bogus violation notices about my boat's aesthetics. The land survey showing I legally own the only marina access documents showing that 6 lakefront properties had already been bought up by Sinclair Lakefront Holdings, LLC, owned by Thomas. Anna's husband a statement from Martin, Anna's ex-husband, detailing their plan to convert the community into a luxury resort by quietly pushing longtime residents out. Then came the smoking guns, emails between Thomas and Douglas Hayes discussing pressuring homeowners to sell via HOA violations, a financial chart showing HOA funds funneled into marina upgrades with 0 community approval. Every slide was a gut punch. Every fact chipped away at Anna's polished facade. And the crowd? You could feel their frustration spreading like wildfire. Eleanor, a white-haired resident who'd lived here since 1989, stood up and said clearly, "I got fined for planting flowers in the wrong spot. Now I understand, it was never about flowers, they just wanted me out." Nods spread through the crowd. People stood up one by one and shared their own stories. An elderly man was threatened over his pickup truck being aesthetic pollution. Young couple was told to tear down their kid's wooden playhouse because it violated public sight lines. A single nurse, working night shifts, was fined multiple times for delayed trash can retrieval. The quiet murmur turned into a full-on uproar, and that's when Anna and Thomas arrived. Anna tried to push through the crowd, shouting, "This is defamation! None of this evidence is legal." But Linda Harrison, the HOA secretary, stood up. Her hand shook slightly, but her voice was steady. "I take the minutes for every meeting, and I have all of it. Every undocumented expenditure, every off-record directive from Anna. It's real." Douglas Hayes, now pale as a ghost, muttered, "I was promised exclusive resale rights if the resort conversion worked." I looked around, then raised my voice. "This isn't personal anymore. This is an organized assault on all of our property rights. If we don't act now, the HOA won't stop." Bob stood tall. "I propose a vote of no confidence, right now." The response was thunderous. Hands went up. The count: 54 in favor, 2 opposed. Anna stood frozen, stunned. Thomas glanced around, then walked off without a word. A temporary board was formed right there in my backyard. Bob was named interim president. Grace became vice chair. 3 other trusted neighbors were nominated on the spot. I stood by the fence, looking out across the now empty marina. No more forced laughter, no more wine-soaked speeches. Just green lake, peaceful, untouched, the way it was always meant to be, and the wanderer floated in place, proud and free, just the way my father would have wanted it. The following week felt like diffusing a minefield, but this time I was the one holding the map. After the vote to remove the HOA board, life in Lakeside Estates began changing day by day. Bob, now acting president, immediately began auditing the finances. Grace hosted open community meetings, inviting all residents to participate. No more secret votes at 7 a.m. on Mondays. No more fines for flower colors or flag heights. Things were starting to feel like a real community again. As for me, I didn't stop. The fence still stood, 6 feet of clean, fresh cedar, but I no longer kept the gate locked. Instead, I mounted a small bronze plaque that read, "Access to Marina, by landowner permission. Welcome all sincere neighbors." The old lock was replaced with a boat cleat, a piece salvaged from the Wanderer, my father's boat. A symbol and a reminder. Freedom must be upheld by action. 2 weeks later, the new HOA board hosted a formal signing ceremony at the marina. All residents were invited. I stood at the open gate, shaking Bob's hand as he handed me the official document, an easement agreement, a legal acknowledgement that the access path across my land would remain open under one condition. It would never again be used to intimidate any resident. I made sure to include clauses that protected my private dock rights and secured permanent mooring for the Wanderer. Some folks said I should have charged rent or demanded damages, but I just shook my head. I didn't build the fence to make a profit. I built it to remind people that ownership isn't something you can take for granted. And Anna and Thomas? They vanished from Lakeside Estates like a bad dream fading in a rearview mirror. They sold their home at nearly 18% below market value and left without a goodbye. But that wasn't the end of it. An independent audit commissioned by the new board uncovered over $47,000 in HOA funds used improperly, funneled into upgrade projects that just happened to benefit Sinclair Holdings. That money is now being sought in court. Thomas is under investigation by the state bar for professional misconduct. Anna, once a licensed real estate agent, is facing complaints before the licensing board. By then, everyone understood. They were no longer a threat, but a cautionary tale. As for me, I restored the Wanderer, new sails, fresh polish on the trim. I invited the neighborhood kids out on weekends to learn how to sail, taught them how to read the wind, feel the water, and, most importantly, understand that sometimes one steady hand at the helm is enough to guide a whole community through the storm. Grace teased. If you're not running for HOA president, you could at least teach a class on leadership? I smiled. I'm happy being the guy who sails and keeps the gate. A year after the fence incident, Lakeside Estates wasn't what it used to be. It was better. No more nonsense fines, no more sneaking across people's yards to avoid confrontation, and absolutely no more whispers or side eyes when the term HOA came up. We held the first summer festival at the Marina in over a decade, with grilled sandwiches, live music, and kids camping by the water. The Wanderer remained at its dock like the quiet soul of Green Lake, watching it all unfold. That evening I sat on the boat deck, watching the lake reflect 100 lanterns from the marina. Bob sat beside me and handed me a cold beer. You saved this place, Jim. I took a sip, eyes still on the water. I just kept a promise to my father. Bob nodded. And maybe save something bigger than the marina, the trust of an entire community. I'm no hero. I'm just a man with an old boat, a wooden gate, and a memory of a father who once told me, hold on to your land, not because of its value, but because of the memories it holds. And that's exactly what I did. The Wanderer is still here. So am I. And Green Lake, once a battlefield, is now a gathering place, a threatened community that stood up, a fence, once seen as a wall, now stands as a symbol of unity and a lesson. When an HOA forgets who truly makes a neighborhood, it's time they face the man who owns the ground beneath their clipboard. Me, the gatekeeper, and the son of a man who taught me never to back down.